Hello, everyone, and welcome to UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts. I am Blaine Gilmer here with co-host Jed May. We're without Trent Smallwood tonight. He'll be back with us on next week, and we may have to adjust the schedule going forward for some things. Everybody's got families, everybody's got stuff going on, but Jed and I are going to be here tonight to talk about this early signing period that Georgia has just completed. Some of the guys that are in the class now of the class of 2022, and even Jed, some that have already showed up on campus. And I know you wrote about that today. So while I'm tweeting this stuff out and getting everything going, go ahead and tell these guys some of the Bulldogs that are already on campus if they haven't seen that already today.
Yeah, tight end Oscar Delp showed up and is practicing. The nylon, easy for me to say. The nylon Morissette is there. Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks, and I'm missing one.
And there's going to
Cedric
be,
Washington.
yeah,
Cedric Washington. Yeah,
Cedric
he's there.
Washington, and there's going to be more too as this thing goes on. I know Sean Washington's going to show up at January 7th, and then I think Gunnar Stockton is already kind of in town, going to be making his practice debut tomorrow. So there are some young Bulldogs already kind of getting shuffled into the fold there. As Kirby Smart said, it's really more just kind of helping them get through practice with numbers and scout team and things like that, which people don't think about, but sometimes when you got some injuries in certain positions and stuff like that, especially getting ready for these bowl practices, Jed, it helps to have some fresh legs there to go on the scout look against you.
Absolutely. I mean, the scout team, Kirby Smart and, the coordinator, or limited time we get to talk to coordinators, they talk about the importance of scout team, all the time, and the guys that have started down there and, worked their way up. And how many times did we hear last year, oh, JT Daniels is working with the scout team. He's working with the scout team, giving us a look. And another interesting thing too, and I put this in the story I wrote, is a couple of these guys that are already practicing could, obviously these coaches have more important things to worry about right now, but like you look at a guy like Malachi Starks, they're not going to be necessarily focused all on him, but depending on what he does this week, when spring rolls around, the staff could already have a jump start on, hey, do we want to try him at star first or safety first or, corner first? Like, could Malachi Starks get a look at receiver in these bowl practices on the scout team just, for kicks? Maybe. So guys like that, especially, I think this helps just from a standpoint of getting it's basically an early jump start on spring practice for those kind of guys and getting their feet wet to college football and the routine and all that kind of stuff. So definitely got to benefit those guys that are able to get in town earlier than early, because early enrollees.
Absolutely. And like you said, if it's just nothing more than just seeing the athleticism, that they're going to be going up against on a daily basis, or getting to meet some of their future teammates, starting to, because Kirby Smart, one thing he talked about with this team, and one of the strengths of it, Jed, has been the connection piece, right? Those skull sessions early on, things like that. So the earlier you're able to start building some bonds with some guys, some connections, all that kind of stuff, it's that does nothing but benefit those guys. So that is a component of it. And Georgia came in third in the rankings after the early signing period was completed, with Texas A&M putting together what looks to be a historic class, not just for Texas A&M this year, but also just maybe an all-timer, Jed. I mean, they're really putting that together, some numbers over there, and Jimbo Fisher, riding that wave of that Alabama victory as far as he can go, for sure. And then Alabama, of course, right there again. And Jed, one thing I was impressed with, in terms of around the SEC and recruiting, Kentucky comes in with the number 10 class in the country, fourth in the SEC. It's the level of competition. Georgia has to keep recruiting it the way they are, because Kentucky's starting to recruit well. You see what Shane Beamer's doing, going out, getting guys in the transfer portal like Spencer Rattler and the tight end from Oklahoma as well. So Kirby Smart and his staff always are going to stay on top of this recruiting and never let up on it, because they know that everybody else is fighting to get in those talented prospects as well.
Absolutely. And Billy Napier too. I mean, he showed, what he could do in his limited time on the job at Florida, getting Shamar James and getting Kamari Wilson, who we all kind of thought was going to end up at Georgia until pretty much, last Wednesday. So they showed what they can do. Shane Beamer, like you said, is doing some things at Kentucky. Like I said, Mark Stoops has done an incredible job. The thing, I think that's one of the coaching jobs that I don't think gets talked enough about nationally. Just the job he's done making Kentucky into a perennial. I mean, no one wants to play them ever. I mean, they're a really tough team. They give everybody a game.
They're physical.
They're
I mean,
physical, yeah. I mean, it's like people talk about that Alabama effect, and you play Alabama, and then the next week you're wore down. And Kentucky obviously isn't Alabama when it comes to that, but there's something to that. Just the physical toll that playing the Wildcats and Mark Stoops takes on you. So, but yeah, like you said, Kirby Smart's got to keep the train rolling at keep it going full throttle, because if he doesn't, there's all these other SEC East schools. Not to mention, the two from out west that are going to be joining the league in a couple of years too.
absolutely. And before we get to our vault questions for tonight, and make sure if you're not a member of the vault, you're going to want to have everything as we get ready for CFP, playoff preparation, get in there in the championship, especially if Georgia's able to, there are 7, depending on where you're getting your number at right now, they're anywhere from a 7.5 to a 9-point favorite out there against Michigan. And if they are able to cover that spread, do what they're supposed to do against a very, very good Michigan team. Nobody says they're overlooking them by any means, but if they're able to take care of business there, you're going to want to be a part of the vent and the vault as they get prepared for Alabama, presumably in a national championship rematch. So a lot to look forward to. Jed, I jokingly put on there that Daniel Jones has been sidelined for the rest of the year for the New York Giants, and if Jake Fromm is indeed named the starter, it looks like in 2 weeks it could be Jake Fromm versus Justin Fields when the Giants take on the Bears in a couple of weeks. It'd be worth being a member of the event just to see that alone, what that conversation would look like.
I've really been thinking lately that what our site needs is more quarterback conversation. I feel like that's a topic that really is kind of off the radar and swept under the rug when it comes to this team. So that would be perfect, get the conversations going on the vent, I think.
Yeah, I don't think the quarterback's talked about enough at all. But before we get into our vault questions, as I was saying, Jed, I do want to kind of talk about, okay, what Georgia got in this class. And I know we talked about it briefly with Jim Donnan the other night. Roddy was on, things like that. But a lot of, concerns of maybe did Georgia get what they needed? A lot of people asking that question on the vault, and I think when you have players that a lot was talked about in terms of, what Georgia maybe didn't get with Kamari Wilson going to Florida and things like that. But when you look at safety, okay, when you look at the safety position, I think that guys like Malachi Starks, guys like Ja'Cory Thomas, extremely overlooked. Ja'Cory Thomas is a guy, Jed, that when he worked out for Georgia this summer, just blew him away. I mean, Will Muschamp was there watching, and all of a sudden, he was still in his off the field role at this point, but he's there watching, and he sees something going on, and he immediately goes and gets Kirby Smart and's like, hey, we got something right here. We need to make a pressing matter here, and they end up offering him a scholarship. And Ja'Cory Thomas had a great year for Boone High School down there. Did a lot on offense and defense, but two tremendous athletes coming in this class, Jed, at the safety position, Malachi Starks and Ja'Cory Thomas.
Absolutely, and that goes back to what I was saying a minute ago. If Starks maybe gets a look somewhere, you wonder if the decision by Kamari Wilson to go to Florida changes maybe what the staff was thinking for Starks. Do they give him more of a look at safety? Do they start him at safety to begin with? The same with Ja'Cory Thomas. Do they, look at him more at safety? But both those guys, like you said, are very skilled athletes. Malachi Starks, I think, is one of the best athletes in this class. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, he could end up getting at least some looks at receiver just with his pure athleticism and ball in his hands. Skills. He played quarterback. Everybody knows at Jefferson, just up the road from Athens. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the secondary class shakes out. That's one I remember at the piece I wrote the other day. Position groups to target in 2023. Safety was number one on the list, I think, just because this class doesn't have that one true safety. And Starks and or Thomas could both end up being very good safeties, but they're not true safeties, at least from high school. So, but we'll see. Who knows? I mean, they could both end up being all SEC players at that position. You never know.
Yeah, and when you talk about, they've also talked about Julian Humphrey, who's now, north of 6'1", 185 pounds. They've talked about him being able to play all 5 different positions in that secondary, and he's a guy that has true 4.3 speed, be able to move around. And Kirby Smart reiterated it again in the in his press conference today when someone asked a question about, how do you handle the when teams go tempo and when teams are doing RPOs and all the intricacies of modern offenses. And he's like, you got to cover. You got to be able to cover man to man. And I think that's one thing that does intrigue people about this upcoming Alabama and Cincinnati matchup, Jed, is that they have Kobe Bryant and Sauce Gardner, who are maybe the 2 best corners in the country. I mean, Kobe Bryant won the Thorpe Award, and many people thought that Sauce Gardner would win the Thorpe Award. And over 1,000 snaps in his career, he's not given up a touchdown. So it's going to be interesting to see how Cincinnati with the elite corners like that, how they're able to match up with Alabama's receivers. But that's what Georgia's trying to put together, Jed, with bringing in this DB class, Ja'Cory Thomas, Julian Humphrey, Jaheim Singletary, who I feel like people, it goes highly overlooked that Georgia, they just signed the number 1 corner in the country, and people don't seem to be talking about it nearly enough, in my opinion.
Right. Listen, man, I employ the same strategy on Madden, right? Like, you can't just have 2 outside corners that are good and then, leave the rest chance. You got to have, because like you said, a lot of times you're having 4, 5, 6 defensive backs on the field at one time, and you got to be able to cover. I mean, it's that simple. You got to be able to cover man to man. You got to play, like matchup zone. You got to play straight zone. Like, you got to do all these different things at all these different positions, and you got to have guys that can do it. And when you sign a class like this, that's looks like the staff. When you look at how games are gone over the past couple years, the Florida game last year, the first Alabama game this year. I mean, that when Georgia has been beaten over the past few years, the
coverage issues. Yeah.
I mean, that's been the issue on this defense over the past. I mean, I say issue, in air quotes, but they've been gashed through the air at times. I mean, that second quarter against Alabama, everyone was like looking around the press box, like, what like, this team is just getting torched, and they just got exposed. Those issues could be fixed, going to the potential national championship rematch, and that's a topic for the guys on the show tomorrow. But to wrap it up, yeah, it's like you said, they're trying to build a secondary that can cover, at every position, safety, star, outside corner, and a class like this goes a long way towards establishing that.
Yeah, and then another guy that I think people aren't making a big enough deal of, Jed. You have Brent Venables leave for Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden here comes Dalen Everett open, and Georgia did a good job of maintaining that relationship since early on in the summer, an official visit that he took, and then here comes Everett as part of this class, and Everett. 6'2", 180 pounds. I mean, he's got length, Jed. He's able to, they could move him, inside on a bigger bodied, maybe a tight end, something like that to play man coverage with. So, he's a true corner, but he's got flexibility. And I think that's what Georgia achieved with these 5 guys, except maybe Jaheim Singletary, who is a guy who you probably want to put on an island. And, that's going to be the guy that goes and covers the opposing team's number 1 receiver. You've got other guys that I think can be used in various places, and they can all really, really run. So I think that's a big positive, elite defensive back recruiting for Georgia in this class. And I think they've got to potentially add maybe one more, in the portal as things, come that way after the college football playoff. But Jed, in my opinion, one of the bigger recruiting jobs may be, can Kirby Smart recruit like a Lewis Seen maybe to come back for another year? Lewis has got a family he's got to take care of and things like that. But if Lewis could be convinced maybe to come back for another year, if it's guys like him, guys on the edge like Nolan Smith, things like that, those tend to be sometimes the biggest recruiting jobs, is recruiting the guys currently on your roster to stay another year.
Absolutely, and there are obviously reasons outside of this, but say Georgia comes up short against Michigan or against Alabama or Cincinnati, obviously that loss would be would crush the players and the staff. But the second this team gets back to Athens, Kirby Smart is going to be selling the Lewis Seams and then Nolan Smith. Hey, we got unfinished business. Come back for another year, we can get us over the top. Come back for another year and be a part of another dominant defense. Lewis, come back and prove this secondary is better than the issues it's had at times. That would start, I mean, probably probably on the flight back from Indianapolis. And we saw that in 2017 when Nick Chubb and Sony Michel and all those guys came back for their senior year, and we all remember what that team did. So that's like you said, those are some of the most important recruiting jobs, and that's going to definitely going to keep the staff busy, throughout January.
And I feel like the other thing that Georgia, when they have been beaten over these last couple of seasons, it's been okay, not only not able to cover, well, why are you not able to cover? Because you're not consistently able to get to the quarterback, right? You're not able to get pressure without having to try to manufacture too much pressure. And Georgia goes out and they stock up on guys on the edge this year, right? CJ Madden, who's more of a guy that I think is going to grow into that role over time, played some inside linebacker this year for the state champion Cedar Grove Saints, but now he's going to be moving outside. But you get two bona fide 5-star pure edge guys in Mykel Williams and Marvin Jones that signed, and then another one coming in February, which I don't know if you saw the video on social media of Darius Smith going and doing a between his legs dunk over there in the gym, but just a freak athlete at 6'6", 225 pounds already. Georgia's loaded up on the edge in this class.
Yeah, I'm telling y'all, watch Darius Smith because he is going to be a freak. Like you said, a video, Blaine, you mentioned him dunking on down there at Appleton County. The dude is a freak athlete. He's long, he's rangy, he's super athletic, raw when it comes to the technique and all that kind of stuff of an outside linebacker. But dude, I mean, he's got stuff you can't teach him. I think we've said that every time we talked about him, and he could be. I mean, I don't know. Like you said, there's two bona fide 5-stars in Mykel Williams and Marvin Jones, but he could grow into being just as much of a factor on the edge as those two guys easily if he ends up putting it all together.
Yeah, and Marvin Jones and Mykel Williams, make no bones about it, Georgia's not promising anybody playing time because that's not what Kirby Smart and his staff do, but they were definitely sold on opportunity. There will be opportunity there because Adam Anderson looks like he's never going to play the Georgia Bulldogs again, and then Nolan Smith could be gone. Like we said, we don't know if he's coming back or not. Robert Bill done, so they're losing a lot there on the edge. And, that's going to be, but they need more dynamic guys. And you got that combination of size and athleticism. We saw Mykel Williams at the Rivals 5-star challenge, was very impressive there. Marvin Jones, when you watch his film, I can't get over the closing speed, right? It's like he gets around he's able to maintain his bend and full speed, go kind of running the loop, so to speak, around the tackle. But then once he gets there within closing proximity to the quarterback, it's almost like he hits another gear and he is attacking the ball as well, Jed. I mean, it's amazing how refined some of these pass rushers are now. You see it in college and the NFL all the time where they're immediately the hand is going for the football, right? Wherever it is on the quarterback. But now at a program like American Heritage, where he's coached by Pat Surtain, senior, these guys are refined coming out of high school, and he's got the skills to make an immediate impact. Marvin Jones Jr. does for Georgia.
Well, and you look at NFL teams, often the three of the highest paid guys are the quarterback, guy that protects the quarterback, left tackle, and the guy that goes and sacks the quarterback, either defensive end or outside linebacker, no matter who you're playing. And those are guys, Mykel and Marvin, that look to be. I mean, those guys are critical to because, like we were just talking about, the coverage issues. Part of that is you can't cover for 6-7 seconds on every play. You got to have guys up front that can affect the quarterback, and those are two guys that will have every opportunity to come in here. Mykel is an early enrollee. I'm not positive if Marvin Jones is an early enrollee.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up showing up in January. So
I think so too.
He'll end up being there. But I agree with you. And these are guys that are listed respectively. Marvin Jones 6'4", 242. Mykel Williams 6'5", 258. These are guys who are SEC ready in terms of their bodies, right? It's not like much of the strength and development has to be there. It's just getting there, getting used to the pace of college ball, and learning Georgia's system, so to speak. There, but two exciting guys on the edge to be there now. Offensively, I think, Jed, is where a lot of the concern is, and we have questions over there at wide receiver. in the vault. When I say we, I'm saying we are getting inundated with questions on the vault about wide receiver recruiting, and we'll talk about that today. I actually had somebody, reach out to me today asking me a question about, Cortez Hankton, and asking about, connections to LSU jobs and Texas jobs and things like that. And I'm like, well, if that happens, I don't know what the reaction would be on the on the vault based on the questions one way or the other. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this stuff plays out. Over the next couple of months. But with that being said, Jed, we got a lot to answer on wide receivers, some other offensive positions. So we're going to go ahead and get to our questions here. If you'll read off this first one for us.
It's from Riser. It says, outgoing to clearance, a good word, and portal notwithstanding, what do the coaches see as our biggest roster needs post early signing day? Which of those needs do you project getting addressed in February versus the transfer portal?
So when you talk about for the 2022 season, not for the 2023 class, but going into next year, I mean, Kirby Smart is adamant that the two positions that they don't have enough bodies at, in his opinion, and with what they would like to have, is just simply numbers. They're below numbers at wide receiver, and they're below numbers at defensive back. Right? They lost 5 guys to the pro ranks last year, either through the draft or undrafted free agent. And, 2 of them made interceptions yesterday with Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes. I mean, they're really, really playing well. Imagine those guys had eligibility. They could have came back for another year for Georgia. If they'd done that, that would have been pretty crazy. But I think those 2 positions are the ones that will get addressed eventually in the portal. And maybe, I'm not sure that there's any guys out there left to take at either one of those positions in February. I think most of the February signing class, Jed, will be bigger guys, whether it's offensive line, defensive line, edge position, those type of guys in the trenches. But I think going forward in the portal, wide receiver and DB are where Georgia will address.
Absolutely. Because like you said, most of the guys at those positions are off the board. The one name to sort of monitor is Jacoby Matthews, the 5-star safety, but it doesn't really seem like Georgia's a huge factor. They're obviously doing their due diligence and all that kind of
and
thing.
Being out of Louisiana, it just
Right.
even though Georgia did pull Sean Washington, and make no mistake about it, I want, before I cut you off even further there, I do want to let people know, with Sean Washington, Florida and LSU both came heavy after him, especially late in the recruiting cycle, and Georgia was able to hold on to him. So a big recruiting win there. But yeah, Jed, go ahead and talk about Jacoby, and then everything else at wide receiver and DB.
Yeah, just gonna say, Jacoby, it's a name the staff has been in contact with, and will, I guess, keep trying, but it doesn't seem especially likely there. And like I said, the other Georgia targets, it looks like it's Shamar Stewart and the Kristen Miller and those guys that are signing in February. So not really either of those 2 positions. So it'll be one of those things that'll be addressed in the portal and you look too, just because a guy doesn't end up transferring in, January, February, March, they could still add guys later. I mean, Darian Kendrick and Arik Gilbert both.
In the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it was June 1st because it was my first day on the job. So it can go pretty late towards the beginning of the season when those guys end up coming in the transfer portal. So just because a guy doesn't end up coming in February or March doesn't mean the staff isn't and won't continue to, scouring the portal for guys they think might fit the program.
Yeah, and when it comes to Georgia, everybody needs to remember too, Jed, being in the college football playoff, it's what you play for. It's what you want to do as a team, but it also delays your processes when it comes to coaches coming in and out, right? And also, except for in the case of Dan Lanning, but even him, he's going to be staying around. That means he's still there. He's still on staff, right? He's still, even though he's got one foot out the door to Oregon, he's still on staff. He's still getting paid by the University of Georgia for his remainder of his time there. So you can't really hire a offensive or an outside linebacker coach on top of it. Well, same thing with the transfer portal. A lot of these guys aren't going to leave, even though if they know that they're heading out, they're leaving the program, Jed, because they got a chance to win a national championship ring. They're not going to, give that up to leave a couple weeks early. So I think you're going to see a lot of the both coaching movement and transfer portal movement for Georgia when it comes to probably mid to late January. You'll see a wave of it, and I think it won't just be Georgia. Like you mentioned, Alabama, Cincinnati, Michigan, all of these teams that are still in it, even some guys, that are currently some of the top FCS programs playing in their playoffs and championships right now. There's a lot of pieces to still, to hit that portal that are going to. People are talking about Kayshon Boutte, whether he's going to hit the portal or not for LSU. So it's going to be interesting to see who actually goes in. But I think middle to late January, you're going to see a second wave in this transfer portal.
Absolutely. Because like you said, and even guys, I mean, as much as we won't want to say that, the Rose Bowl and that type of thing don't matter, that goes for those programs too. Guys from you think those guys from Utah, the first Rose Bowl appearance in school history, are bailing on the Rose Bowl? No. Not that, that Georgia's necessarily interested in anybody from Utah at the moment, but point being, a lot of this movement, everyone wants it to be now. And I think with some of the guys that have gone in already, but I think most of this process isn't really going to get rolling until middle late January.
Yeah, well, to your point, even if somebody's not, let's say somebody does play for Utah and they're not necessarily where they want to be on the depth chart, but they're second string, right, and not necessarily a starter somewhere, but playing in the Rose Bowl is exposure, right? If they get a chance to go in that game, they scouts and a lot of eyeballs on them and things like that. So people aren't going to forego those type of opportunities most of the time. Jed, next question there.
Yeah, from PA Dog 610. Any surprise commits in the February signing period?
So here's what I think you got to look out for. I think like I said, the portal is going to crank up middle to late January, right? And I think the signing day is February 2nd, February 3rd, early on. You need to pay attention to the names there, because I don't think it'll be I don't think it necessarily anybody's in danger right now of being forced out of this class or anything like that. But I think that there are some cases where if the right names hit the portal, there could be a change in what this class ends up looking like in February. I think there could be some different names that are added to the roster.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Because it's going to be this staff is going to work hard once these guys start hitting the portal, like we've been talking about, middle late January, to get them into that early signing period. Because like I mentioned a minute ago, guys can sign, in the summer, but it's obviously an advantage for next season the sooner you get those guys in here. So it's going to be a flurry of action, guys going in and guys coming out, guys leaving and coming in. And once the season ends in the middle of January.
Yeah, I agree. Now, when you talk about the Georgia class right now, there's plenty of speculation out there that Ernest Green has signed a letter of intent. We're not going to say, one way or another, because the young man's going to be at making an announcement. It's widely speculated that Georgia had a solid lead on him going into the signing period, so he'll be making an announcement. But Jed, one person that did not sign his letter of intent that you got confirmation on today was Kristen Miller, and you put that on the vault today. In terms of a surprise commit, it could be a surprise that Ohio State is, and we'll have a question on this, so you can just briefly touch on this, but Ohio State is really making a push for Kristen Miller out of Cedar Grove.
Right. They've been pushing hard, and obviously it's a win for them that he hasn't signed at this point, because that's more time to keep recruiting him. And something I thought about today, and this is pure, I don't want to make it seem like I have sources on this, and I just thought about it, a little while ago, but obviously Dan Lanning was recruiting Kristen Miller at Georgia. I believe, Blaine, correct me if I'm wrong, Oregon was in Kristen Miller's top 4 that he released, I think.
Yeah, they were prominent
for sure. Just that he's already got that relationship there, and I don't necessarily think he ends up there, but Dan Lanning is, I'm sure, going to be giving him a call and pitching him to come out to Eugene. But yeah, we're not sure if he's still committing publicly at the All-American Bowl, because that was the original plan, to sign then publicly commit, or if he's going to be, signing and committing all at the same time in February. But either way, yeah, that's a recruitment that is still very active and ongoing, and it looks like it's a Georgia and Ohio State battle.
Yeah, and so lots of interest in there. Just the surprise of, will Kristen Miller announce at the All-American Bowl in January, or will he not? So let's move on to the next one here, Jed.
Yeah, Jay Doggy says, what will fix the receiver recruiting issue? Simply putting out a more explosive offensive passing attack, or does something else deter the blue chip prospects from coming to UGA consistently?
So this question is asked about 7,000 times in different ways on the vault, and we love it because that's what it is. It's the passion, right? It's the passion of the Georgia fan base. It's what makes the vault and the vent a great community to be a part of. And J Doggy is asking the question that everybody wants to know: what's preventing, consistently? Georgia's pulled a guy like a George Pickens in, but what's consistently been the separating factor between the Alabamas and even the Clemsons when Clemson has been dominant, out there for the last few years, and that is the elite, NFL major talent wide receivers, right? And I don't want this to be a bash Georgia's current wide receiver session, Jed, because Georgia, in my opinion, has plenty of weapons on that offense. I mean, guys like Jermaine Burton, Kyrus Jackson, there is a ton of weapons, but what is your opinion on that first? Do you think that it's simply Georgia does not throw the ball enough? Georgia asks receivers to do too much in the blocking schemes on the run games. I mean, what is not enough targets? What is your thoughts on why blue chip receivers don't seem to hit at Georgia sometimes?
I mean, to be honest, I think it's probably all of those factors come into play, but it's probably like a different thing for each guy. Some guy wants to go to a place where he wants the ball thrown his way 15 times a game. Great. School A can be for that. Some guy wants to go to a place where he's not going to block as much. Okay, school B can do that. I think, there's certain things because if we look at it, Georgia as a program, top program, recruited consistently, great facilities, all that kind of stuff. And receiver, because look at what Alabama signed. The receiver class that Alabama just signed is ridiculous.
Yeah, even a guy like a Kobe Prentice, who they just pulled in, that was formerly committed to Maryland, and he comes into camp and just blows them away in Tuscaloosa. They offer him on site. He's going to end up being, one of the premier receivers in the entire class. That's a guy that they kind of found a diamond in the rough type deal.
It's absurd, and I think honestly, what's going to have to happen is either I don't necessarily think the offense has to change, but I think you're either going to have a receiver start putting up big. Because look at Brock Bowers, man. Like the tight end, it's working for the tight ends. Brock Bowers is putting up crazy numbers this year, and I think a receiver is either going to have to have a season or two where you put up numbers like that, or you have a receiver that develops in Athens, and while he doesn't necessarily put up huge numbers, gets developed into a first-round draft pick. And obviously, you look at George Pickens. Could he be a first-round draft pick? I don't know. Maybe not with the injury. He certainly looked like he might have been on that track. But you need a guy like that to at least be developed in Athens, I think, is the more, logical. Because Kirby Smart, at this point, this doesn't look like an offense that's going to throw the ball 45 times a game.
Well, they did. They threw 49 times against Alabama, but
the game they're winning
didn't turn out too well. Here's kind of my view on these wide receivers. I think a guy like a Jermaine Burton, there was as much as excitement. I remember when covering his recruitment, there was as much excitement out there about Jermaine Burton arriving on campus at Georgia. And you look at what he did his freshman year, he really excited, but he's been hurt. He's been hurt this year, hasn't been able to consistently stay on the field, stay in practice. Kyrus Jackson, and an electrifying receiver. He's consistently, banged up and hurt. It seems like George Pickens, Georgia's elite number one target, torn ACL, out for most of the season. I feel like there has been time after time where Georgia wide receivers have had the inability to stay healthy. And I think, people knock a lot, and we're going to have a question on here in just a minute about the inability to keep the same guys on the field and things like that. And Georgia playing too many receivers and the such, and not letting guys get in a groove. I think the GPS numbers, the science, all that kind of stuff, the data that these coaches use, right? They know the peak number of plays and reps and all that kind of stuff. And I think the injury history plays into that too, Jed.
And Arian Smith. That's
Arian Smith.
That's the groundbreaking speed. And make no mistake, Blaine, you mentioned this a minute ago. obviously health is, the huge caveat to all this, but Georgia has enough receiver talent on this team, I think, to win a national championship. All things, everybody being healthy, I think. But that being said, they also don't have the level of talent is not as where Alabama is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even close. And
It's
again,
not
that's
where
what I mentioned.
one guy is, right? It's not like
Right,
you take Jameson Williams, who was a transfer, a porter,
right,
Alabama. You take Jameson Williams off that team. You saw what happened. John Mechie's a great receiver, but you saw what happened when he was the number one threat against Auburn. They were able to put Roger McCreary on him, lock him down, except for that 2-point conversion there, of course, in overtime. And, that changes the game. That's what I think the Georgia fan base is craving, is a guy who is that elite, just break it long after the do something with it after the catch type receiver. And I don't think Georgia has had that in quite a while. Even George Pickens who's a phenomenal receiver, ridiculous athlete. He's more of, okay, I'm going to win 50-50 balls. I'm going to
right.
be physical and use my body to make plays that I shouldn't make, but not necessarily a dynamic elite speed guy like a Jameson Williams, right? So I think that's what Georgia now they're trying to infuse speed even in this class. Jed, you got Cole Spear, a 4.3 guy. You got CJ Smith, who run a 10.28 100 meter. That's coming off a meniscus injury. So if he can be healthy, can Arian Smith be healthy? I mean, they're trying to pump as much elite speed in the wide receiver room as possible. Ladd McConkey, I mean, he's not he's a 4.4 guy, a high 4.4, low 4.5, but you couldn't play tag with him in a phone booth, right? I mean, he's shifty side to side. So there's elements there. Now, can Georgia get the full potential out of AD Mitchell, right? Can they get the full potential out of, coming in this class, a Denylon Morissette, who's a more physical, big-bodied type receiver? Can Jermaine Burton become a bona fide guy? If, let's say, George Pickens goes to the NFL, can Jermaine Burton take that next step and be a true bona fide number one guy that stays healthy, stays on the field, and makes teams command double teams? Because there's one thing about Jermaine Burton, he does have a bit of that in him, where he can make a catch and then make people miss after the catch.
Yeah, I think it's like you mentioned a minute ago. How many times in the past 4 or 5 meetings between Georgia and Alabama has Alabama thrown a slant to a guy over the middle and he blazes through Jalen Waddle in that 2018 SEC championship. Jameson Williams the other day, like Georgia, like you said, Georgia doesn't really have that guy. Because George Pickens isn't the fastest dude in the world, especially not on, a 70% recovered ACL right now. So maybe Cole Spear develops like that. Maybe Ladd McConkey continues developing into that guy for all we know. And you look at AD Mitchell, if Georgia develops AD Mitchell from the recruit he was into a quality all SEC player and higher draft pick, that could help recruiting down the line. But right now, it's definitely something that, whether it's the pitch, whether it's whatever it is, the receiver recruiting is definitely something Kirby Smart and company are going to be evaluating this offseason, I think.
Well, you can say this and it'll be absolute fact. If they're healthy next year, Arian Smith and Chandler Smith on the field at the same time, there will be no faster wide receiver duo than that in the country. Bar none. They'll be the two fastest wide receivers if they're able to play together at the same time and be healthy. So what Georgia has to do is they have to be able to, one, I think, however they're going to address the quarterback situation in the offseason, whether Stetson Bennett returns, whether Stetson Bennett hangs it up and JT Daniels returns, whether it's, both guys decide to move on or it's an open competition and Brock Vandagriff or Gunnar Stockton, whoever wins the job, they've got to get continuity with those guys early and just pray for health, right? As long as those guys can remain healthy, you get the reps that you need in the summer. My argument was that in 2020, if at the start of 2020, Georgia, I think, was full scale, ready to turn this thing into a passing, a more passing heavy offense. But then COVID hit and you're not able to have a full offseason and all that kind of stuff. And in year one with Todd Monken, Dwan Mathis didn't work out. you bring in Stetson Bennett. It's a different skill set. He was a first-time starter that year. People think that they're frustrated with certain things that have happened this year. Stetson was learning entirely new in 2020, right? So bring in a inexperienced former walk-on quarterback. Then at least this year he's got some starting experience and game experience under his belt. So I think it's just been as much as Georgia fans probably do not want to hear it. It's been bad luck with injuries. It's been bad luck with how the timing of integrating Todd Monken's offense has come in to play. And now Georgia has to figure out in 2022 and beyond, okay, who's going to be the guy at quarterback? How is it going to look? And then get that continuity and that practice in, Jed, where you're able to consistently say, I'm going to have faith that, I'm going to hit the top of my drop, and I know where my receiver is going to be, and I'm going to lay it out there and utilize that elite speed.
Absolutely. And looking at, Denila Morissette's here early. Guys like that, could he work his way into things? Guys like that. I don't know. It's like you said, continuity is so big between the receivers and those guys. It's going to be something that's going to be worked on all offseason, especially going into year 3 of Todd Monken, presumably.
Presumably, you never can take anything for granted now. At LSU contacting him, and supposedly that there's been conflicting reports whether that offer was actually ever extended or not, and how interested Monken was in it. So, but like I said, we won't find out any of that kind of stuff, whether some people are really actually wanting to come after a Todd Monken in that until after the CFP is over with, right? So there'll be some key parts on that. Have a little shout out here from DeBusk. He said, fact, recruiting never stops at UGA. Keep it up, guys. Y'all do an awesome job. We appreciate that, DeBusk. We really do. It's not easy sometimes, but we enjoy covering it, the crazy world that is recruiting. Jed, what's our next one there?
From JSong17, do you think Arch Manning, I'm going to have to look that kid up. I don't think I've ever heard of him, is the best quarterback in 2023.
Who is this Manning you speak of? No, I think when you look at the entire package, right, and you look at what Arch is able to do mentally with the poise, and he's probably the most athletic. I mean, you saw that the game that Kirby Smart went and watched Arch Manning in New Orleans there at Isidore Newman. They were taking on a school from Tampa, and nationally televised game. And then, Jed, here goes Arch Manning, which everybody assumes is going to be kind of like his Uncle Peyton and Uncle Eli, more pocket passer type guys, and he takes off on a power read and pulls it and goes 60, 70 yards for a touchdown and was pulling away from people. I mean, he's not going to be a guy that you look to make design run for all the time at the SEC level and stuff like that. But at 6'4", 215, Arch Manning can run. I don't know if that pro style is totally, he's not going to be confused with a dual threat, but he's more than just a statue there in the pocket. He can move.
Right, and I saw a tweet today. I forget where from, but he plays basketball for Isidore Newman too. And how many times we heard coaches love those multi-sport guys and just that develops athleticism and all that kind of stuff. But how often have we talked about it with Stetson this year? You don't have to be a Lamar Jackson or whatever running for 120 yards a game, but extending plays, moving in the pocket, making throws on the run, that is what's so critical in modern football, pro and NFL, college and NFL. And Arch Manning has that. He has the capability to move when he needs to. Like you said, he's not going to be getting 15, 20 carries a game probably in college, but he has it in his bag when he needs it. And that's something that's really separates him from these other guys, along with obviously the arm talent, the poise, and all that other stuff that, he's not just a last name, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, he's got everything you want in a high school quarterback.
Yeah, so I think the other candidates, as you can see right here, Malachi Nelson, of course, tremendous player in his own right. He is committed to Lincoln Riley. He was committed to Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, has since flipped his commitment to USC, a Los Angeles or California, Southern California guy. Anyways, so that kind of worked out for him to kind of stay home. Dante Moore, a good, solid quarterback. I'm not sure about the competition he plays there in Detroit. It'd be interesting. But a guy that I think people need to look at if Georgia, and I think he may be severely underrated, Nico, and I'm going to butcher his last name here, but I think it's Imaliva. Nico Imaliva. He's from Downey, California. Todd Monken has spent time out in California going to see him play this season, and it is quite possible that if Arch Manning, if something happens and Georgia's not able to pull in Arch Manning, Nico is the next guy up in this class, the guy that they're very interested in. They're interested in Marcel Reed too, but I think Nico would be that second guy that Georgia would look at there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a guy that, like you said, anytime a guy of Todd Monken's, caliber offensive mind is going to see you play, especially a guy that's across the country, that shows that Georgia is interested in him going forward. So, like I said, Arch Manning is obviously the big fish, but if he ends up at Ole Miss, Texas,
wherever,
Jackson State, whatever, Nico Imaliva is definitely next guy up.
And and Nico's a guy too that that moniker of pro style is not the traditional pro style guy. Nico can run. He's 6'6", 205. He's kind of got that wiry frame, but he's tall. He gets a lot of leverage on his throws, and I mean when it comes out of his hand, just with the long arm and the like I said, the leverage when he lets it go, it really just rockets out of his hand. I mean, he's got a strong arm. That would be a guy that Georgia would be highly interested in there. So I do think the answer that Arch Manning is the best QB in 2023, but it's not like he's just far and away. If you don't get him, there's no other elite quarterbacks in the class. I think a guy like a Nico, I'm not even going to pronounce his Nico I is going to be up there, but there's also other guys that are starting to climb up the board over there, and guys even like Marcel Reed, who's rated as a 3-star right now. But I'm telling you, I watch Marcel Reed's film, and he plays for Montgomery Bell up in Academy up in Nashville. I think he is a tremendous prospect. He was at a Georgia game earlier this year, so very, very interesting quarterback targets in the class of 2023. Strickdalls 7. What message does having your top 3 receivers with only 20-plus catches send to recruits? Do any 2023 recruits want to come play with our current quarterbacks? Well, I haven't come out and said, hey, what are your feelings on Stetson Bennett, or what are your feelings on JT Daniels or Brock Vandagriff, Carson Beck, Gunnar Stott, and any of the like. I just mainly, Jed, when I talk to him, I ask him about how much does offensive style matter to you? What's your thoughts on, being a wide receiver in a pro system, things like that? That's what I tend to ask them. What are some of the responses when you talk to wide receivers, especially younger guys, about the offensive fit and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, especially when we're talking about 23 and 24 guys at this point, they're not going to be playing with any of Georgia's. I mean, they could be playing with Brock Vandagriff and obviously Gunnar Stockton. Like, they're not going to be playing with Stetson Bennett.
But to be honest, none of these guys are guaranteed because of the transfer portal now.
So
who knows?
It really doesn't. And obviously, coaches aren't, guaranteed. I mean, Todd Monken could go to Jackson State tomorrow for all I know. But that's exactly like you said. That's what I tend to ask him is about the offense and what they see. And generally, I mean, the responses from these guys, talking to them, they seem pretty positive. I'm playing. Wouldn't you agree when you talk to receivers that, hey, we see Georgia trying to throw more, trying to be more explosive. So recruits, they're noticing the effort. It's just they got to land these top guys, right? I mean, it's all good and great to say, hey, I like the offense. Georgia's offense is cool, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Luther Burden liked what he saw from Georgia's offense at points, but you gotta close the deal, and you gotta end up landing these guys. I think that's the last missing. And it could be one of those things too, where we keep talking about Georgia's not getting these guys. Georgia's not getting these guys. If Georgia lands one, say they get Brandon Ennis in the 23 cycle, just say that could open the floodgates, and all of a sudden Georgia starts. If he comes here and ends up being a first-round draft pick, that could end up opening the floodgates for guys in the classes to follow. So I don't know. I think the whole we don't want like recruits don't care if I mean they care who their quarterback is, but recruits aren't thinking, oh man, Georgia's quarterback Stetson. Like Stetson Bennett's old enough to be some of these kids' dad, right? Like they're
Because
not. They're not
it's not guaranteed with a lot of these
yeah.
guys, but it's also not a strong deterrent. I would think for the 2023 class with Georgia being a more pro style and balanced offense, because you can see some of the and people are gonna laugh about this, but in the 2023 class, Pierce Spurlin is a guy who is 6'6", 230 pounds. He's listed as a tight end, Jed, but that is not a normal tight end. This is
No.
a guy who had over 300 yards receiving in a single game this year and 5 touchdowns in that game. He is a dynamic playmaker that will be paired at least for one season with Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp in that tight end room. And he's going to be a guy at 6'6", 230 that can legit split out and play the X position. I mean, he's that kind of route runner. He's that kind of has the ability to go up and get the ball. So Pierce Spurlin and people don't have to worry about losing him in this class, because I was texting the 2023 class commits the other day, getting their reaction to the 2022 signing and them only being a year away and things like that. And Pierce Spurlin said, I was born a dog, I'll die a dog, and he can't wait to play for Georgia. So he's a guy who's locked in. Raymond Cottrell and DeQuavius Sari are also 4-star wide receivers that are already committed to Georgia. So they have 3 pass catchers already committed in the class of 2023, all 4 stars. And I think all guys, Raymond Cottrell and Pierce Spurlin in particular, have a chance to climb up the rankings as their senior year goes on. Raymond Cottrell is a guy who was committed to Florida, Jed, and Florida has a I don't know what it's going to look like under Billy Napier, probably a little bit more balanced run style offense than it was under Dan Mullen the last couple of years. But Raymond Cottrell is a guy who, he was committed to Florida partly because of that style that Dan Mullen plays. And now he's coming to Georgia to be part of more of a traditional balanced style of offense. So obviously it's not the determining factor for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, that 23 class for sure is off to a good start with those 3 guys you just mentioned. I mean, if Pierce was listed as a receiver, I mean, if he showed up at the underclassmen challenge or whatever with the receivers, none of us would have batted an eye. But yeah, they're off to that good start. I think what's not necessarily missing, but like getting that huge bona fide number 1 guy, landing a Brandon Ennis, a Darius Redmond has Georgia in his top 4, I think it's 5, I believe he released yesterday or day before. Getting one of those bona fide just studs that walks in and is a baller from day one, which could be end up being Cottrell and Sari or Pierce. But I think they're off to a good start. It's just getting that one transcendent guy in some of these classes, I think, is what's because you look at all those guys in this 2022 class. Andre Green, no. Luther Burden, no. Shaz Preston, no. I mean, so many guys that Georgia was in it for in this class that all, for one reason or another ended up going elsewhere.
Yeah. And I think, you're going to see Georgia, like I said, hit the transfer portal hard, like after a true dynamic prospect. I'm not sure there's one totally out there yet, but I mean, everybody's already saying it's a slam dunk that if Kayshon Boutte goes into the portal, that he would end up at Alabama, and who knows, he may end up at Alabama. But I guarantee you, his phone's going to be ringing with a Athens area code if he does enter that portal, because a dynamic guy like that, it's not like Georgia's not going to try to go out and get him, Jed. It's just like you said, a matter of closing the deal. And I think this next question may lead into one reason that I agree more than anything is. It says, in those games where we started running out the clock in the third quarter, why don't we give our receivers some work? Those games hurt our receiver recruiting, and we're boring to watch the second half. I do think style of play with how Georgia has won games could be, it's not the determining factor, but I'm sure kids are taking notice, looking at things like that. If you're a running back, it looks great. If you're an offensive lineman, it looks great. Quarterback and wide receiver, it may be a little bit lackluster to you, but like I said, not maybe the determining factor, but I do think it probably has something to do with it. Georgia's been so dominant, and they hadn't had to throw the ball in a lot of games this year.
Yeah, but I mean, you've mentioned, it seems like once Georgia gets up, 20 points, they turtle up and they run the ball first and second down and throw if it's longer than 3rd and 6. And if you're a receiver, you're thinking, man, okay, in these games, I'm going to play for a half. So that's what, 35, 40 plays, whatever. And that's X amount of targets. I mean, the math doesn't look great for these guys to be putting up huge numbers, which I think could be where the explosive stuff comes into play, right? If you're catching fewer balls, but they're bigger passes, like you get numbers that way. I don't know. Like it's like I said earlier, it's a different thing for every kid, I think, and we can go round and round in circles all day trying to figure out why they're not getting this kid or that kid or whatever. But I think it comes down to each kid, depending on which factor is, whether not wanting to block or whatever. And B, I think it's something that's going to be evaluated all offseason. Is Kirby and staff saying, hey, do we need to change our overall pitch? Do we need to sell this more? Do we need to change how we try to close? I mean, there's so many things that are going to go into this. They're going to be evaluated to try to land those big guys, like you said, playing either in the transfer portal or, that big guy in the 23 class.
Absolutely. And then Scuffleton Dog, one of our mainstays here, one of our favorites, says, who do we lead for, in your opinion, in the class of 2023? And he's talking about non-committed guys. He says, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Kwanzaa. What a great country we live in through the eyes of a 70-year-old Vietnam vet and believer. Well, Scuffletown, we appreciate your service and amen to the last part there. So we appreciate everything. But, Jed, who do you think that Georgia leads for non-committed in the class of 2023? I know a couple of names that right off the bat that I think of is when I say leads, they're right up there with guys like Justice Haynes, who's a legacy, of course, Madden Sanker, who's an in-state offensive lineman that has been to Georgia several times. Any other guys that kind of just pop off as guys that you think Georgia is either the absolute leader for or right up there in maybe tied for leadership?
Yeah, LT Overton is that guy. Was the number one player in the class. I think he's number 7 or 8, somewhere in that range now. One of the top defensive ends. Georgia's right there with Texas A&M. It's neck and neck at this point. Jonell Aguero,
the safety, Aguero. Right. Yeah, Jonell is a guy that honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he's in the class at some point sooner rather than later with Jonell.
Absolutely, and he's another one of those guys. Safety, maybe star, maybe. I think the staff can move him all over the defensive backfield. Let's think.
Raul Aguirre,
another guy.
He's a guy that I don't know how much. He's got some ties down to the Miami area, I believe, and I'm not sure how much Mario Cristobal really affects his progress. I'm sure he's going to be kind of keeping one eye on that situation over there, Jed, just to see, hey, is the U going to be back and things like that. But when it comes to Raul Aguirre, I think that's one you got to look for. Kevin Call, yeah, he's a big guy. Kevin Call is a edge rusher, defensive end type out of Apopka, Florida, and it's from the same school that Jalen Carter is from. And, really had a really good relationship with Dan Lanning. So it'll be interesting to see, who kind of picks up the slack in that recruitment. He's got offers from other SEC schools. So I think that's one to keep an eye on. And then I think there's 2 tight ends that could join Pierce Spur in this class. Is it going to be who's going to kind of grab the brass ring, first, so to speak? Is it going to be Lawson Lucky or is it going to be Neo Avery? At one point we thought Neo Avery, literally we had the edit, we had the story ready to go. Mm-hmm. He'd even said that he was going to end up committing to the University of Georgia. Told us, we had quotes, we had everything. Then he gets home and reconsiders a little bit after a visit down here. So it'll be interesting to see where Neo Avery ends up. A athlete, really plays quarterback out of Our Lady Good Counsel High School in Maryland. But he had a teammate as a walk-on commit to Georgia, I think, in his same class, Jed. Because we saw that hit on Twitter and we're like, who is this kid? We've never heard of. Oh, okay, it's preferred walk-on. So yeah, one of those deals. Any other guys that you can think of that Georgia kind of leads for right off the bat, off the top of your head, or is going to be? Obviously, you got to look at all these legacies, right? Justice Haynes, Lawson Lucky, Justin Benton, a lot of guys that Kirby played with, that a lot of guys that he played with or they played right after Kirby did that are starting to have high school age kids come about, and that could help with Georgia, with the relationship there.
Absolutely. Geez, man, there's a corner. I feel like there's a corner, and I'm totally
Tony Mitchell.
Yes, Tony Mitchell. Thank you. Yes,
Tony Mitchell's a 5-star, the number 2 corner in the country. I think it's Georgia. Honestly, I think Georgia and Alabama are in a dogfight right now for him. Now, Auburn has been doing some good things. Like I said, they've been able to put what Roger McCreary has been able to do on tape, and he's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick probably in this upcoming draft in April, so they can push there with him being a in-state guy. But he's out of that cup, that powerhouse program, Thompson High School over there. So it'll be interesting to see where Tony Mitchell ends up. Also, another guy that, in terms of the running back position, 5-star Reuben Owens. Reuben Owens out of El Campo, Texas. It's going to be just Georgia's going to take 2 running backs in that class, but it's kind of 3 guys for 2 spots. Okay, Richard Young, Reuben Owens, and Justice Haynes. Those are the 3 guys that they're attacking in that class. So a lot of interesting ones there. But those are some guys that you should feel good about and kind of keep your eye on in the class of 2023. Jed, here we go. You talked to him today. Tell him what the deal with this one is.
Yeah, I talked to Kristen Miller earlier. He gave me a line when he picked up the phone like he was a company or something. So that was funny. He's always a character to the last, Kristen Miller. But yeah, he did not sign. That we had kind of thought that going into the early signing period that he was going to be signing an NLI and then announcing later. It's Georgia and Ohio State, I think. I mean, Oregon, maybe. I'm sure we'll give him a call with Dan Lanning. USC has always kind of been there. Alabama got in late, but I really think it's in a Georgia and Ohio State battle, and it's gonna be a dogfight. I mean, quite honestly, Georgia has kind of always been there, and so has Ohio State. We've all kind of thought Georgia's led for a while, but we thought that with Kamari Wilson too. And
I was about to say we're going to start calling this the Wilson lesson, right? So
yeah.
If a guy has been supposedly 100% committed, even rumored to be the silent commit, Jed, I've learned to hate that term because a silent commitment means absolutely nothing. It is worthless. I don't even like using. I'm not going to even stop using that term. If we ever hear on the vault or something like that, because it means nothing. There's no point in passing it on, because even if you hear that, it means absolutely nothing, because literally you go from us hearing at 1:45 that Kamari Wilson has called the staff at Georgia, things like that, and said, hey, I'm coming to Athens, and then at 2:15, not coming to Athens, I'm going to Gainesville, Florida. So it is that much of a volatile situation when it comes to those silent commits. And who knows, Kristen Miller could be playing everybody in the world right now and say that he knows he's coming to Athens. He's just like I said, this is a young man who has a little bit of entrepreneurship about him, right? He's building a brand on his YouTube channel, doing a lot of things. Always is never shies away from the spotlight, right? So Kristen Miller, having this opportunity to be one of the last ones in the class of 2022, that's kind of right up he's not going to shy away from that spotlight. He's not
going to shy away from creating drama here down the street. Or not creating drama, but kind of enjoying the spotlight.
Some suspense, some intrigue around his recruitment. At this point, I would still say that Georgia is in a great position with him because of the relationship with Trey Scott, the relationship with Michael Williams, who's literally like as close. He told me verbatim that Michael was like a brother to him, that he's, a true blood brother to him is what he equates Michael to. They talk every single day about a lot of stuff. Got Alu Bob recruiting him on social media, all these 2020. Yeah, a lot of those guys. So it's gonna be something that Georgia's not giving up on, but also Ohio State's not giving up either, with Ryan Day already done his in-home visit. But it is worth noting that Kirby Smart has his in-home visit still to do with Kristen Miller. And if he is not announcing until signing day in February, I'd look for Kirby Smart whenever the contact period opens back up for him to do in-home visits again, to be in the home of Kristen Miller there, around Cedar Grove High School. So he'll be there on a visit with him because he is a guy that Georgia desperately wants to have in this class. All right, got a few more that we're going to knock out here. We're going to do a rapid fire. We've already kind of touched on that one, Roxy, with some of the guys in 2023. So we'll move on. Jed, Drew Yang 96 has a question.
Yeah, in case y'all hadn't heard, Travis Hunter committed to a little school called Jackson State, Mississippi last week. So Drew wants to know, do y'all believe Deion when he says there was no NIL deal to get Travis Hunter? He said Barstool money was not involved. What do y'all think?
Yeah, that's absolutely false. Barstool was 100% involved. Deion just wants to make much of the perception of Jackson State being able to flip a Florida State target. Ain't even a guy that Georgia and Alabama and everybody else wanted to have. Everybody in the country wanted to have in Travis Hunter, and rightfully so. He should revel in that moment. That's a huge accomplishment. But acting like the revelation of NIL money and the ability to compensate a young man handsomely through partnerships with a company that he also works for, Barstool Sports, is an absolute, just falsehood in its own right. There's a middle ground there, right? Deion probably did a great job recruiting the young man, but also it was a lucrative offer that, whether the number of 1.5 million is 100% accurate or not, Jed, if it's even remotely close to that number, it's an offer that Travis Hunter could not refuse.
Yeah, I mean, let's get one thing out of the way. Good for Travis Hunter for making his money, because that's something that has been an NCAA. I mean, I'm not going to go on this whole, Jay Billis, Kirk Herbstreit diatribe about the evils of the NCAA, but good for him for making money on his name, image, likeness, and all that kind of stuff. And, he posted on his thing on Instagram after he committed that he wants to, pave a path for other athletes to go to HBCUs and all that kind of stuff. We've kind of seen in basketball the past couple of years as well. And I'm sure that's part of his decision, but to act like, the NIL had to play some part in this. I mean, let's be real. Was it 40% of why he chose to go? Was it 60%? Was it 1.5 million % why he chose to go? I don't know.
I talked to a trainer that is very involved with a lot of these high profile recruitments, Jed. And he said the same thing, talk about how great it is for HBCUs and things like that. This man is African-American himself. And he came out and said to me, he said, but let's be honest. He said, if Idaho came at him with 1.5 million, he's going to be in Idaho. Like that's how it goes. I mean, but the thing is, I don't think this is going to create an all out, tipping of the scales where guys are consistently going that route, because there's not enough funds to go around to, handsomely pay that many guys. You may get 4 or 5 a year with similar deals or deals that are, much more significant than the guys could have gotten at a Power 5 school due to the number of the sheer numbers that have to be brought in. But I don't think it's going to be just changing the entire landscape of recruiting. All right, next question, Jed.
Yeah, from Cannibal. Did we ever have a secret signer on Thursday or Friday last week, as you mentioned at one point?
Yeah, I think someone did, and I can't. I've been told that they did. Georgia got one of their targets there. We'll kind of leave it at that, but also someone that is not even on the radar, and I can promise you that not even on the radar. There are rumblings that there's a significant development that could be taking place within the state of Georgia that would dramatically change the class of 2022. So we'll be able to give out more information on that when we can over on the vault. Don't want to betray confidences of sources or young men until it's safe to do so. So that's what we'll continue.
I signed. I signed to be Georgia's quarterback.
Jed is now going to be in the Georgia quarterback room. So that's
I'm 6'3", and I played quarterback when I was 7 years old. So
hey, that's it. That's it. He's going to sling the rock for Georgia. Dave Smith, do you think Ringo would be better suited to play safety? This is a question you probably need to ask Jim Donnan tomorrow in that show with Roddy and Jim and Dane. here's my thing, Jed. Keely Ringo was graded out as one of the best corners in college football all up until that Alabama game. And it's not like Keely Ringo can't run. He's a true 4.3 40 guy. Hits close to 21 miles per hour on the GPS when they run. I mean, he can really, really run. It just so happened that maybe one of the few players truly faster than him in college football was the guy that he was guarding. And when he was guarding him, he never got his hands on him. He gave him a free release and let him able to just. I told my dad, he was talking to me about the game and stuff. I said, Dad, it's like an airplane. Once it gets on the runway and gets going, it's you could run something out in front of it. It's not gonna stop it. I mean, you have to get your hands on a guy like that early. So I don't think that people should be overreacting too much about Keely Ringo's ability to play corner.
No. I mean, that's from everything you're saying right there. I mean, it sounds like a technique, issue or whatever, more so than a talent issue. And if Keely Ringo had come in and the staff had put him at safety from day one, I'm sure he probably would have been a pretty good safety. But it's like you said, he's been fantastic. Because Georgia, let's be honest, I mean, Darian Kendrick has been solid on the one side. I mean, the corner. Remember back at the beginning of the season, coming into camp, that was the huge concern on this defense was the secondary. Who are gonna be these outside corners, with all those guys that left, and you bring in Darian Kendrick to settle down that one side. And remember, it was Amir Speed and Keely Ringo at the beginning, and then Keely Ringo has taken that job and run with it all year. And you can't really ask for much more of him than what he's done this year.
Absolutely. And it's been down there the whole time on the show, but I did want to, tell everybody that this show is presented by Dead Soxy, and you can get a 25% off, promo there with the code UGASports. So make sure you can go there to deadsoxy.com and check that out. And our last question here of the evening from Big Dog, or it's kind of a statement and then getting our reactions. He says he believes if Georgia wins the championship, that they can continue retaining a very strong recruiting base at Georgia. However, if they don't in the next 2 to 3 years, it will greatly reduce the ability to do so. Thoughts? Jed, I'm just going to come out and tell you that you will never, as long as Kirby Smart is the head coach at Georgia, you will never have to worry about recruiting. It's not, oh, so you're telling me, you tell people, hey, we play for the SEC championship and or are in the college football playoff consistently, and it just so happens that the one team that has been the scourge of the Kirby Smart era just happens to be the literal greatest dynasty of all time in the Alabama Crimson Tide. Plus, only 85 guys can be on scholarship over there at Alabama. It's not like everybody can go to Alabama. So I think Georgia's recruiting will continue to stay just fine.
Yeah, and I remember talking about this, I don't know if it was last week or week before, but if you're getting so close and not getting over the hunt, you can obviously there's other things they pitch these kids on, but you can sell a Jaheim Singletary or a Branson Robinson, whoever. Hey, come to Athens and be the missing piece we need. Be the shutdown corner, be the lockdown left tackle, whatever. That's something you can sell these kids on just as much as you can sell Lewis Seen and Nolan Smith on coming back for unfinished business. So yeah, I don't think. I mean, look, Georgia doesn't ever wear black jerseys either, and they use them in recruiting, right? So, it's I don't think winning a national championship is going to kill recruiting if it doesn't get done in the next few years. Like you said, with Kirby Smart in town, recruiting is going to be solid for as long as he's here.
And it just seems to boggle my mind. People don't realize that Georgia is literally about to take the step of playing for a national championship. Like they are one game away for playing for the second opportunity in Kirby Smart's coaching tenure here at Georgia, the second chance to win a national championship, and that's in a 6-year time span. So it's a matter of time. I tell everybody, Nick Saban can't live or coach forever. He's either going to retire or die at some point, one of the two. I'm not saying that Georgia can't beat Nick Saban or can't get over the hump, but people need to realize this is a battle that literally everyone in the country, if they were in the SEC, they would run into that brick wall as well. Texas A&M beating Alabama, in my opinion, was a very fluky thing because Zach Calzada had an outer body experience. I mean, he was playing, he was playing unbelievably well in that game, and it did not match up with the rest of his performance for the year. And sometimes that's what it takes, right? To be able to, you see upsets all the time in that matter, pro sports, college sports, the like, where people just play outside their mind. But I don't think you got to worry about recruiting. I don't think you have to worry about this Georgia football program as a whole, because I think they're going to absolutely continue to perform at a high level as long as Kirby Smart's there. And I'm sure there's a lengthy contract extension that is about to be pushed his way with probably $100 million attached to it, Jed.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. And the thing is, we've talked about, I might have talked about this before, Kirby Smart, I don't see him ever leaving for an NFL job. And why, if you're him, why would you leave for another college when you're at the school? It's your home state. It's your alma mater. I don't ever really see him leaving for another college job. And I feel like he's going to keep this train rolling. It's like you said, it's only a matter of time when you keep stacking these classes. And look, could the wide receiver recruiting be better? Yeah. Could he handle quarterback situations better? Sure, maybe, whatever. But and the thing too, he's only been a head coach, period. I mean, this is his.
He's 45 years old. He's 45. Yeah. He's in his mid to late 40s. He's somewhere between 45 and 47 years old. I don't know exactly what his age is, but people need to realize that I think Nick Saban didn't win his first title till he was 10 years older than Kirby Smart was. So he's a prodigy, in the coaching world, so to speak. Has done a lot, to be only in his mid 40s, and a relentless recruiter. Nobody's perfect, but he's gonna continue. And trust me, nobody wants to win a national championship for the University of Georgia more than Kirby Smart, and I think that's even more doubled now, Jed, when you have Will Muschamp coming in as a defensive coordinator.
Right. And the thing I was going to mention about Kirby, he had, not only is he good at recruiting, but he has the passion for it. That I think, look what happened to Dan Mullen. All this stuff that came out about Dan Mullen isn't that relentless recruiter, and he got canned. And I think Kirby Smart, that passion for recruiting isn't something you can grow into or something you can develop. It's not something you learn with time as a coach. You've either got it or you don't. And Kirby Smart's got it. And that's the type of thing that it doesn't really go anywhere. And that's a big key for keeping these, top 3, 5, 2, whatever recruiting classes going year after year.
Dan Mullen just got tired of going into people's homes and saying, listen, when my wife kisses your son when he gets off the bus, there's nothing to that. She's just an affectionate person. Okay. That's how that goes. He got tired of that kind of conversation, and recruiting didn't want to keep doing that over and over. But on that note, that is all for us here on Rumors versus Facts, guys. I am Blaine Gilmer here with Jed May, and recruiting never stops, and we'll always continue covering it. Check out Jim Donnan and Roddy Nabulsi and Dan Young tomorrow at noon, I believe, on this channel. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and we will catch you next time on Georgia Recruiting Rumors versus Facts here on UGA Sports.